In most of the previous tutorials, we have seen the use of RBDLab where an object hits a wall and the wall fractures. Now, what if we would like to achieve the opposite, where the statue hits the wall and the statue fractures? Something like this. So how do we achieve this using RBDLab? So for that, we'll use a new module, the dynamic switch. So this dynamic switch module has two main functions. The first one is to dynamically parent the chunks of the fractured object and then giving us the ability to animate it along with the original object. And the second thing is visual switching, where the visibility would be of the actual object. And right at the frame where the rigid body simulation starts, it's going to change the visibility to the chunks. So these are the two main functions of the dynamic switch module. So let's see in detail how we can use the dynamic switch module in this tutorial. Here's a simple scene where a statue hits the wall and breaks into pieces. So let's click on the wall, and to this wall, under Motion module, a passive rigid body has been added to it. And for the statue, let's work on inserting a few keyframes. So let's bring the timeline. And at frame 1, let's insert a location and rotation keyframe for the statue. And at frame 30, let's move the statue and rotate it so that the head is facing the wall, and insert a location and rotation keyframe. Now let's take a look at the animation. And that's what we were looking for. Cool. And now let's add physics to the scene. So let's head to the physics module, and first let's add ground. And now let's select the statue, and let's head to the motion module. Now here, let's say at frame 24, we need the statue to switch from being animated to being a rigid body. So let's click on Set Kinematic, and let's take a look at the animation. There you go. So that's the rigid body simulation. Perfect. Now, while the statue is selected, let's fracture the statue by adding a standard scatter and increasing the density and fracture. The fracture looks good. Let's auto smooth and apply fracture now. Cool. Now, what we're interested in, let's bring back the original statue for the visibility. So what we want is for the first 24 frames, all of these chunks need to move along with the statue. And at frame 24, we would like the switch to happen, at which point these chunks start behaving like rigid bodies. So the way we can do that is by dynamically parenting the chunks to the statue. So let's head to the dynamic switch module, and let's set up the original object, which is our original statue. And let's bake the original statue to keyframes. And let's use 100 frames. And here we go. We have all the keyframes baked. And we want the switch to happen at frame 24. So let's click on switch at frame 24. So what happens now is all of these chunks are parented to the statue and move along with the statue until frame 24. And from frame 24, they participate in the rigid body simulation. Perfect. Now, what we also want is the chunks not be visible until frame 24. So for that, we can head to visual switching and then click on switch visibility. So for the first 24 frames, we don't see any chunks. And at frame 24, the visibility changes and the chunks start participating in the rigid body simulation. There you go. Perfect. Hope you like this tutorial. Thank you, and stay tuned for more tutorials.